What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Steve's Project Car Garage. My name is Steve. The day has finally come. It's time to go ahead and get some pistons installed to this old girl. So grab yourself a cup of jitter juice and let's get wrenching. So in the last video, you saw the carnage from me dropping that piston. Like I had said at the end of the video, I went ahead and decided to go ahead and get a new piston, and it arrived. So I got this new piston, got the piston rings put on it, and this guy is ready to roll. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just start installing the pistons one at a time. And as we get them installed, what we'll do is go ahead and get them kind of placed and then get them installed into the crank and just kind of take it one piece at a time. If everything goes well with that, my next goal is to go ahead and get the oil pump put on. I do have to go ahead and flatten it a little bit on a piece of glass just to kind of bring in those clearances a little bit closer on the top. And then hopefully fit the oil pan. We'll also have to do the front sealing block too, so forgot about that. But yeah, that's kind of my plan of attack for this video. Fingers crossed everything goes smoothly and we don't run into anything fun or exciting, but if we do, we will figure out a way and keep pressing on. So let's get digging in. All right, so time to get started. Kind of show you what I got set up here and what we're gonna do. So I've already taken a lint-free cloth and I've gone through and cleaned all the bores. These all look like they're in pretty good nick. And I've got myself some WD-40. I'm sorry, not WD-40. 10W30 in here, non-synthetic, just conventional. And we're going to use that to apply some light oil to the cylinders and also the pistons. Got myself a ring compressor. This is good for up to 3 inches. It's for small engines, which is exactly what we got. 2.9 on the pistons. So I got my pistons laid out. We're going to start out with 1 and 4. The plan is we're going to do 1 and then 4, and then we're going to get the big end connected, put the bearing cap on, and get the outer ones done. We'll rotate the crank, make sure everything moves nice and free, and then we will go ahead and do 2 and 3. So that's kind of the plan. I've never done this before. I watched a lot of videos on doing it. The last one I watched was Chris Fisher when he was doing Dorothy. And I'm going to just mimic his process. I felt that was great. And one last thing is I am going to go ahead and use ARP bolts. So I have the assembly lube and everything here. And so these should definitely be good for me and won't stretch or any of that jazz. So that's the plan. So let me get you set up on a tripod and let's try to slam some pistons home. All right, so before I go ahead and start doing anything, just kind of want to show you here. I've been going through all the pistons, making sure everything lines up, make sure that the oil rings are touching, not overlapped, make sure that my rings are set in the correct position. This was about 1.5 inches, 2 inches over from the wrist pin. Same on this side for the top ring. And then I've got my compression rings both here. One going with the gap on one side, one going with the gap on the other. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just use my little oil squirter here. I'm just going to put some oil on in to the oil ring itself, just to provide some lubrication there. My cat has decided to say hello. That's who's shaking the camera. And then what I'm going to do is get this into the ring compressor now, and then I'm going to put some oil in here just to kind of help with the movement, get it all going, and we'll get this started. All right, so we have the arrow pointing to the front, got the ring compressor on, and let's see, we're going to rotate the crank so that way it's at the very bottom dead. So that way I don't really have to worry about tapping this. And I'm just going to lightly position that on in there. And I'm going to start sliding it in. Okay, I feel like that landed on one of the rings. So I wonder if I need to tighten this guy up just a little bit. There we go. We're in. All right, well, that wasn't terribly scary. 1 down, 3 to go. All right, and one thing that I forgot to show off camera was that I went ahead and I oiled the cylinder walls prior to putting those in, so those did get oiled up. But now it's time to go ahead and turn these guys over and connect them to the crankshaft and keep carrying on. All right, so with the crank in the full bottom position, I'm gonna go ahead and just try to wipe these and get them as possibly clean as I can. All right, so I'm gonna take a little bit of the assembly lube and I'm gonna put a little bit down into the oil passageways. So there's a little bit of extra lubricant that'll be in there for when startup happens. I do plan on priming the oil, you know, prior to startup, but never hurts to have a little extra assembly lube in there. All right, so I want to start with piston number 1. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just move the piston up, or in this case, I guess it'll be down. And to bring it up into the picture a little bit more, I guess I move you there. You can get a better view of it. And I'm gonna just take a little bit of this assembly oil or lube right here. And I'm going to give the bearing itself a nice healthy coat, as well as the journal. You can never have too much, I don't think, at least. Maybe you can, but all right. And so now what the idea is, I'm just going to push from the bottom until I get that up in there. Perfect. And now here is the bearing cap with bearing. As you can see here, there's a number 1 that's scored. I guess here. As you can see, there's a number 1 that's scored on this. There's also a number 1 that is scored on the connecting rod as well. And those numbers, you want to make sure you get them matched up as best as possible. Now we're going to go ahead and get this guy done up with some assembly lube. Okay. Again, noting that the number 1 is right here. There's also a number 1 on the connecting rod here. Okay, so that's the first one. Now I guess what I'll do is I'll start working on the second one. And then I'll get some bolts put in, but just for security purposes, until I open up those ARPs, I'm just going to put this in here so that way I don't have to worry about it dropping out. Make sure there's nothing on that. You don't want any contaminants on your bearings. My finger with assembly lube will be it. Again, getting the journals. Okay, bearing cap. I'm gonna look for my number. I should see a number 4. Yep, right there, you can kind of see it. Beautiful. All right, so these are the ARP connecting rod bolts. and the ARP assembly lube. So what I'm going to do is fully lubricate the threads on this. And we're just going to go ahead and get these guys hand tight. That's kind of the goal. And then they said to also lubricate the underside of the head. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and get that guy put on in. Let me get the other one. The idea here is that, again, we're going to get through all of the pistons first. Get all the pistons installed, hand tighten these as we go. And then once I'm able to rotate the crank and everything has nice free motion and I don't have any binding or any issues, that's when we'll then go ahead and get these all torqued down. All right, so I got this side just about done. I'm gonna go ahead and go off camera and knock out the other side, and then we'll catch up with you once we have the other pistons installed. All right, so it's the next day. We're back here in my office. So as you can see, we got the pistons installed, and I was able to go ahead and rotate the crank in the clockwise direction, and everything felt smooth. No binding or anything of real concern that I had. I did notice that the pistons are a little off center though when you get down towards the bottom. I need to do some research into that and find out what that's all about. See if that's okay, expected, or what. I'm not really sure what would cause that. So yeah, not sure. If you know, happen to see that before, let me know. But I'm guessing it's just because probably the cylinder walls are larger at the bottom than at the top. Don't know. I mean, they bored this out 20 over, so really it should be even, but I'm not sure. Anyways, what I'm going to do now is roll this guy on over. I'm going to get these torqued on down. All right, so I totally missed this, and this just goes to me being a noob. But it turns out that all it was that the pistons weren't centered on the gudgeon or wrist pins. And so all I had to do was kind of just reach in, and I was able to kind of just center it. And as soon as I did that on each of these, even after rotating the engine a few times, they are nice and centered. So crisis averted. Don't worry about yelling at me in the comments. But if you do have any guidance, I mean, of course, feel free. But I think I have this one licked. So let's get it rotated. Let's get those connecting rod bolts torqued down, and let's keep plugging away. All right, so time to go ahead and get these torqued down. So the ARP studs said that you're supposed to use the stretch method, but if you don't have the ability to do the stretch method, then you can just torque them down to 45 foot-pounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do these down to 25 foot-pounds first, and then I'm going to try to get them on here evenly, and then we'll do 25 foot-pounds, and then we'll introduce it up to 45. I don't want to do it too unevenly. Okay, that's 25. And now let's go to 45. There we go. Sweet. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. And we'll turn it in the clockwise direction. There we go. And we will repeat the process. So again, I'm going to go to 25 and then 45. Perfect. There we go. Everything is all torqued down. Now, I think what I'm going to move on to next is going to be the sealing block, which is right here. That'll be the next thing I conquer. Once I get the sealing block done, then it'll be time for the oil pump. So let me get that all situated, and I'll check in with you in a few. All right, so we're back. So next up on the dock, it's going to be the front ceiling block. So this is the ceiling block that goes over the front bearing cap, and it has these two little pieces of paper gasket. I'm going to put some gasket cinch on these. I have trimmed them down substantially from the way they were when I got them, because they just had a lot of paper overhang, and I'm just trying to avoid that, because to me that paper overhang is stuff that can get caught up and can become debris. So I got that all trimmed up. That should not be a problem. So I'm going to use some of that Super 300 gasket cinch. And then once we get this gasket cinch on there, we're going to go ahead and just place the ceiling block down there. And then we're going to put the screws in here. I'm going to put them in relatively lightly. And then this goes against everything that I believe in, but we're going to wedge some wood into the gasket port, or the the sides of the gasket for the ceiling block. And that's going to form an additional seal. And then once that's done, we'll go ahead and tighten these all down. So let me go ahead and get everything set up and let's get cracking. All right. I tell you, I love this Super 300. I'm so glad that Chris turned me on to this stuff. I used it on the the water pump. And I had to go ahead and actually disassemble the water pump after putting it together. And the Super 300, it actually doesn't dry, which is really kind of cool. It forms a sealing bond, but it does not dry. And because it doesn't dry, I was able to actually take the pump apart, and the gasket cinch actually absorbed into the gasket itself. And in doing so, it pulled apart cleanly, and the gasket was actually still good to go. So I could have reused the gasket if I want to. Of course, I am going to go ahead and replace it, but it is pretty nice.
2 very boring minutes later.
All right, so I got those done up pretty good. Now the book also says to get the ends of the ceiling block. So I am going to go ahead and get these too. So we're just going to take a little hair and we're just going to put it on in to these grooves. So now we're going to go ahead and place the ceiling block on in. And now we have the screws. All right, so we got those in there loosely. They're not tight at all. It just says do it loosely. And now what we need to do is smear the two pieces of wood and tap them in. Once we've got them tapped in to the ceiling block, what we'll then do is align the front face with the actual block, make sure that's all aligned. And then we'll go ahead and tighten down the retaining screws, and then we'll trim the wood pieces off. So they want you to smear the compound onto the wood too. The old wood pieces that I put out, they pulled out, they were black. I'm guessing that's from engine oil and not whatever joining compound they were using in 1969, but I don't know. We'll make it look the same. All right, so I trimmed these pieces of wood just a hair because they were really a bit large. So they're about the right width. But now I'm gonna go ahead and drive a piece of wood, oddly enough, into my engine block. Maybe. All right, well, looks like a little piece of the wood broke here on the end. I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. This wood is not anything special that I can tell. I think it's probably just like some cheap pine. It's very soft. And as I'm hammering it in, you can see it's taking pretty good shape there. And it's just kind of peeling back the part that's not needed. And there we go. So what I'm going to do now, it's going to get a blade, and I'm going to cut that flush. All right, so using a straight edge, I'm going to just push this straight edge against the block here. And it says I need to align it. Now it looks like this actually, oddly enough, that ceiling block has a bit of a curve to it, I think. Maybe. That's weird. Yeah, it looks like the ceiling block itself might have a little bit of like a bow to it. You see that? I don't know. I'm gonna line the edges. The edges are good and aligned. That center sticks out a little bit, but I'm not gonna be too worried about it. This is a tried and true block, so should be okay. You know, actually, let me take that back. So I'm looking at the picture. In the manual, this is actually how they went ahead and lined it up. They had the part going like that, as opposed to across. That's in the shop manual. That's a little proud on that end. Okay, so I could not find a torque setting for these, and I'm not surprised because they're just flathead screws. But I'm just gonna get them decently tight, and we're just gonna call it a day. Now what I gotta figure out to do is how to trim those. That's gonna be the fun part. I was gonna try to just use a blade, but I don't wanna like mar the metal. So I think what I might try to do is take like a new blade out of this guy or something and see if I can potentially just try to like, I don't know, lay it flat across here. It says obviously don't undercut it, which makes sense.
12 seconds later.
There you go. I mean, that works. That actually doesn't work too bad. So I'm just gonna lay the blade there and let the blade do the work. All right, well, so that's the front ceiling block. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. It looks good. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get this a little cleaned up, and what we're going to move on to next is going to be the oil pump. Let me go ahead and show you what I got over here. So on the oil pump, I've already got it cleaned up, and it's ready to go. But what I need to do is actually go ahead and remove some metal. All right, so on this, I measured all the specs, and everything seemed to be good. However, there appeared to be just a little bit of an extra gap of the top hat, or the hat here that sits on top of here. I don't know what the term is and whatever, but it just kind of needs to be flattened out a little bit. And once I have that done, we should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this all apart and then just try to remove just a tiny sliver of metal on this, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I've got the oil pump here, and looking at my directions here on how to measure it, and we got our depth here of the rotor. Clearance on this for the inner rotor should be 15 thou, and the outer rotor, well, I guess the 15 thou to 35 thou actually appears to be the depth total for the inner and outer rotor. So what I did is initially when I measured this, I put the hat on, or the top, however you want to call it. And that was on there, and then I was measuring it sort of like that. But looking at the guide, it shows that you actually need to put a flat piece across the top here and then measure it. So I want to show you what I did. I did measure it. I don't need to do anything to it. I just really need to mount it. So let me show you what we did. All right, so I took a flat screwdriver and I just kind of laid it across here. And it's hard for me to even show you because of the angle. But this is how I did it. I laid it across here, and then I took my feeler gauge, and at 15 thou, I could barely get through, going across the top there. And the 25 thou, nothing, absolutely nothing. So that tells me that this rotor is good. Everything in here is good. This casing that the rotor sits in hasn't worn down too much. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in. And yeah, I'm pretty stoked. So let me get this started. All right, so now that we know that the oil pump is good, I'm going to just start getting this installed. I am going to put a nice coating and smattering of assembly lube in here. I know that inside this section here it doesn't make any contact, but it doesn't hurt to get it in there and get it covered. Right. And I'm pretty sure that what we need to do is just install it. But we need to go ahead and, let's see, if I'm not mistaken, I want to put the housing on first. And why not just fully lubricate everything here? Okay, get that all covered in some lube, some goop-a-goop. Should be right there. I think that seems right. Okay, next we're just gonna put more lube all down in here. Just lube it up. Lube, lube, lube. Okay. Now we're going to lubricate this guy generously. Lots of lube. This is the outer rotor. Okay. Now I have the inner rotor. We're gonna again just lube this guy all on up. Can never have too much, in my opinion. Okay, we're gonna drop that on in. Okay. And then we have the top. I'm just gonna put lube up on here. Why not? Again, doesn't hurt. All right. Well, that's gonna sit on there like so. We got these 3 bolts. And I'm gonna go clean up my hands real quick, find a torque spec, and we'll get these guys torqued on. So I'll be back with you in just a minute. Okay, so I found the torque specs on this, and it is mighty low. It is actually 8 pounds. So 8 foot-pounds on this, so it's really nothing. So I'm just going to try to get these to where I feel them grip. And then we'll actually torque. That's 8. Okay. You can almost hardly feel that. It's funny. Okay, that's 8. There we go. Sweet. All right. Let's go ahead and wrap. All right. Well, there you have it. Got the lower half of the engine built. I'm actually really excited. It's a big milestone for me. Next step is really going to be to get the head put on. Well, I get the cam put in first, and then the cam followers, and then the head. Yeah, that's going to be for another day. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Click the bell to keep those post notifications coming your way. And remember, when working on project cars like this, take time with the engine build and don't be that dreaded previous owner. Cheers.